Hi everyone, it's Daryl from Pacific Northwest Medical Group. Last night we had our December kind of end of the year last group meeting, and for those who weren't able to attend, wanted to just do a little recap of what we talked about at the group, share some of that information for make sure that people are aware, and hopefully keep people informed as best we can. We like to start these things out with a little bit of humor. Do a little cartoon here of me have to eat healthier. I know we've all told ourselves these things in the past, and then also me at kind of that slightest opportunity trying to grab that snack. Hopefully now that you're on the medication, that's not something that's happening a lot. But one thing that we did call out last night, that this next thing that I'm about to show might be the scariest thing that you learned today, which would have been yesterday or even today. But there's only 19 days, and if you're reading it, and if you're listening to this the next day, only 18 days left until Christmas. And so Christmas or Thanksgiving came very late this year, and so the time frame is really counting down. So make sure you get out there and get what you need to get. So as usual, we did our introduction, some clinic housekeeping, talked about our new body scanner that's coming in, and one thing that we did different this time was some guided discussions where we sent out ahead of time some of the topics that we were going to discuss, people a chance to kind of think through that, and made the conversations, I think, a lot more engaging. I will mention I was so surprised and happy to find that we had a little bit of a problem with our meeting. We didn't have enough chairs. We had to actually bust out a few from the storage area, which is great. One of the things that we're going to do going forward, probably starting for our January meeting, is Zoom enable these group sessions, and for a couple reasons. One, we've heard the feedback, getting to the clinic, on a 6:30 on a weeknight can be challenging for some folks. And so we'll Zoom enable that. People can teleconference in, participate. We'll be able to record it so that people who missed it can do the playback, and this will be beneficial for everybody. But did our round of introduction this time, with the theme of the holidays. It was just everybody kind of, said what their first name is, how long they've been at the clinic, but also what your favorite holiday movie is. If you just take 2 seconds and think about your own. I had mentioned that I kind of had two. One was a very classic one, A Christmas Story, the story of Ralphie and trying to get his Red Ryder BB gun. But my other one was Die Hard. And, as we went around the room, I was, kind of delighted and surprised to hear how many others had listed Die Hard as one of their favorite holiday movies as well. So I think, at least from our clinic's point of view, if the question's out there, yes, Die Hard is a Christmas movie, and we're not going to dispute or argue that fact. The other kind of ones that popped out was there was a lot of people who mentioned kind of those classic TV show stop motion animation movies, the Rudolphs, the Frosty and things like that. I think there was a lot of nostalgia in the meeting, and kind of all agreed that we missed those. One of the things from a housekeeping point of view, we talked about our Christmas schedule. We are going to be closed Christmas Eve day, which I believe is a Tuesday, and Christmas itself, which is a Wednesday. So we're going to ask patients who normally come into the clinic to get their shots on a Tuesday to try to do it one day earlier on that Monday. And for those patients who come in on Wednesdays to get their shots, to do it one day later. The medication is okay if you slide it back and forth, 24, 48 hours. And so this will give our staff a time to take a little bit of a break and be with their families, but hopefully still keep people as close to being on schedule as possible. The other thing that we talked about, and I bring up, is kind of going over some of the latest news on our blog site. And so for those that don't know, I've mentioned this a few times, but on our homepage, on our website, you'll see this blog section. And within it, one of the things, we post pretty regularly, several times a week, that I like to do is I go out and I find some of the latest research news that's happening in the space for these medications, summarize some of these articles or these research reports, which could be sometimes 5, 10, even 20 pages long at times, to the point where you can digest and read them in 2 or 3 minutes and kind of get the gist of what's being shared or the news from that article. I always include a link to the original source, so you can dive in and go deep if you want. But I provide this as a service just to help people out. One of the ones that we called out this last time was the Hershey's Corporation, which is a very large corporation. They did something interesting in their financial reporting just the other day. And they mentioned that their profit and sales had been going down a bit. And one of the things that they called out was that it was these medications, the semaglutide and the tirzepatide, which were driving an actual decrease, a measurable, noticeable decrease in their business. And so we talked about this before, where going back to 1970 to 2022, the rate of obesity in the United States had been going up year after year after year after year, and only for the last 2 years had they seen it plateaued and actually start to come down, again, thanks to these GLP-1 medications. And so they're having an impact. It's not just having now an impact on people, you're starting to see the impact on corporations as well. Another thing that we're doing, we're posting it here on our blog, and we're also doing it on our Facebook site, which I should call out. If you're not following us on Facebook, please do. Our Facebook gets updated a little bit more frequently than our blog site, but you can find us at facebook.com/PNW Medical Group. We post regularly. You'll probably see every Friday, at least during football season, a shout out from us to the Seahawks fans. For Blue Friday, go Hawks. We make sure that we get certain announcements out there. Interesting things that are happening here at the clinic. On Tuesday, we had a ginormous delivery from FedEx. It was 5 boxes, almost to the ceiling. The person had to come in 3 different times to deliver our stuff. And then we share, some of how the patients are doing and inspirational things and things like that. But one of the things that we're doing on our blog site and Facebook is we're trying to take some of the common questions that patients have been asking and providing, answers to that. People call those facts, frequently asked questions. But when here in the clinic we hear, the same question from 3, 4, 5 different people in a short time span, it makes us realize, hey, this is a common question that's out there. We should try to get ahead of it, make sure that we have some answers for it. And the first one we did in this series was, it's a common question, are there supplements that I should be taking along with these medications? And so we sent a note out to Dr. Vicic to get his feedback and his opinion. And he did, have a set of recommendations on some general supplements that he thought would be good. And we include a list of that down below in our blog post. And, there are 4 basic ones. It's a basic B complex, some probiotic, some magnesium, and a multivitamin. And while we call out specific ones that he's recommended, these are pseudo-generic. You could find them in your favorite pharmacy, Walgreens, Costco, things like that. And so feel free to take this list and go grab them at your favorite source. As a convenience, we stock them here in the clinic. So if you want to get them the next time you're in, you can. Or we've partnered with Fullscript, which is the largest online supplemental provider. And if you order through them by having us send you a link, you get a 10% off the retail price, not just on these, on any additional items that you'd like to get from Fullscript. One of the other things that we showed was, we brought the Invisared machine on, and people are seeing, good progress on that. But one of the other things that we share regularly, and we posted this one on our blog site, is one of our patients. We don't use full names for privacy reasons, but she's been a patient for 98 days. And, while she's in her mid-50s, she's made some pretty good progress in under 100 days, 98 days to be exact. And so, I see this now, and I just, this was taken, November 14th, so a couple weeks ago, and we just saw her in the clinic today, and I saw that her BMI is actually now below 30. And so it's a great accomplishment to see somebody transition, from that obese stage into the overweight stage. I mean, overweight still sounds bad, but when we see our patients transition out of the overweight into the normal range, it's high fives all around. But this patient, she lost 38.6 pounds, almost 6% of her body fat. She put on, over 5% of muscle. And one of the things that I found kind of interesting from looking at her scans is, if you look here, the red is her original scan and the green is the latest one. You can see, she's just shrunk. She's a body within a body now. Side by sides, it's kind of remarkable when you see that. And, this medication really helps. People's willpower and determination to focus on the fundamentals really helps. And I'll just share my own results. So every month I've been posting mine. This last month I'd say has been a challenge for me. And so, I call that out. Don't obsess about the scale. Make sure you're looking at your whole journey holistically. And for me, while the scale didn't move that much this time, I still continue to see, and that's what I called the title here, inches and inches and inches, coming away. And so this is me at the end of April. This is me at the end of November, about a week ago. And, it's a pretty drastic change. The couple things, that I notice is where my fatty thighs are touching have really retracted back. But even, putting my arms at the same angle, you can see where it was touching my kind of extended waist there. And now there's so much more room. And so when we look at some of the change through the Staiku, just the inches are coming off, 3.6 inches off my chest, basically 7 inches off the narrow part of my waist, but other parts of my waist had over 6 inches, the hips are 3 inches. And so reminder, we do these scans, we provide them for free to our patients as a service because we want to make sure that as you're losing the weight, you're losing it in a healthy way. We want to see the fat go down, not the muscle. But also, it's a good motivational tool so that if you hit one of those stalls or the weight's not coming off quite as fast as you would like it to, a lot of our patients will look at the scans and say, oh, well, my weight wasn't going down quite as fast as I wanted. Look, I lost inches. Look, my fat's going down. Look, my BMI is going down. And so it keeps people engaged and encouraged. So kind of back to our scheduled programming. One of the things that we're asking for volunteers from our patients is if anybody's willing to do a 15-second endorsement or video recording, just talking about your own experience at the clinic, good, bad, or indifferent. We're not going to judge, but we would like to put a couple of these in our website and in some of our marketing efforts. Let people know that we are a real clinic, we are seeing real results. People are really transforming their lives. Because so much of the weight loss industry and what you see online today is just pre-canned, fake images. You always see the same person, size 0 in her, her yoga pants and sports bra. We have real people making real progress, and when somebody's thinking about making a change in their lives and they can see that there's actual people going through this and actual people having success, they're more likely to want to engage with us. I think at this point, through some of the people that we've talked to, we've kind of turned into one of the largest dedicated weight loss providers in Pierce County. If I look at it from a review point of view, I would say we're the highest rated, but we've got progress to go, and we'll do that. But if anybody's interested in giving us a video testimonial, in exchange for that, in exchange for you agreeing to allow us to post your video, we would, compensate you with a month's worth of medication. So I think that's a pretty fair deal. One of the reasons that we try to do our before and after pics is so that we can do things like this. If you haven't seen it, this is just at the end of October. We kind of put together a little highlight reel of some of our patients that are on our wall of transformation that have seen some pretty good progress. This happens to be our very first patient who came in through the door. Many of you have seen this person a lot. I'm saying this person because I'm trying to avoid using names on a public forum like this. This person was a great patient of ours. She moved to Arizona, but she was able to continue with us. And, again, the transformations that people are seeing are pretty remarkable. I think you guys know who this guy is. Can't believe how round my face was. Unfortunately, not so much anymore. And then, you may have seen this person around the office as well. Some of the new offerings, we've talked about the Invisared in the past. I'm just going to mention it one more time here. Everybody who's receiving medication, who's on auto billing, gets a credit on their account every month for an Invisared treatment. You can go through the slide or pause the video and kind of read through this. But one of the reasons that we picked this specific machine and invested so much money in it is FDA approved. They've gone through a lot of clinical trials, seen a lot of great results. It's a dual infrared laser and red light machine so that it helps at the skin layer and below the skin at the fat layer. We've seen some really good results on it. Again, won't go through all the details here. You can pause the video and read, but our recommendation for patients who want to take advantage of those credits that you've earned is to use them as you get towards the end of your treatment cycle on the medication. One of the things that it's going to do is help tighten up the skin, and the last thing you want to do is go through a treatment, have some of your skin tightened, and then still have 20 more pounds to lose, because then you're going to kind of reintroduce some of that loose skin. So it's better to bank these up. They don't expire, you're not going to lose them, and then kind of save up towards the end. So that's what some of our patients have done. They've gotten 6 or 8 treatments out of it, had really great results. We are bringing a new 3D body scanner online. It's called the ShapeScale, and it's a pretty amazing device. One of the reasons that we're doing this is there's a small number of our patients that are unable to get their scans with the Staiku. We love the Staiku, love it to death, but because of how it works, how it wants your arms at a certain angle, it kind of fights itself. It wants your arm at a certain angle, but it needs a certain amount of room between your hips and your arms. And for some of our patients who tend to be a little bit more petite, a little bit more pear-shaped, it's hard to get your arms at the right angle and enough space between your arm and your hips for it to register. And so I just felt horrible for these patients who are unable to get their scans. And so we've invested in this new device, worked really carefully with the company and had them share me tons and tons of scans and some of their patient data for people that were petite, 4'11" or below, high BMI, in different shapes and sizes to ensure that we would be able to get, good, accurate scans. And so if you're one of our patients who've not been able to get a scan with the STIKU, we've got this in-house now. We're getting it set up this week. When I say this week, this is the week after Thanksgiving. And I hope by probably next week, the week of December 9th, to be able to start offering this. Now, scans that you did on the STIKU are not going to transfer over. They're two different systems. So for most patients that have already got STIKU scans, I expect they'll want to continue with those. For patients that are starting out, they may want to start with this and continue. There's a lot of overlap in functionality. The key for us was we were leaving some of our patients without the ability to get scans, and that just made us feel awful. Okay, on to some of the guided discussions. And so I'll just briefly walk through it. It's hard for me to recap the full conversations, but here's some of the things that we talked about. One thing is when you get on this medication, sometimes there's changes to our food tastes or our sensitivity to foods. We had a lot of good discussions around this, that for some people is their sugar switch got turned off. For some people it was they were more sensitive to dairy foods or foods that had a lot of fat in them. There's definitely an ongoing conversation around being full and things like that. But it is a recognized issue when you're on this medication. It's not listed as a formal side effect, but it is possible for your food taste to change a little bit when you're on these medications. And even over time, we've had some patients say, hey, at the beginning, didn't like anything like this, but over time that even changed. And so maybe depending on the dosage that you're on, even your changes being on the medication might happen. We had a lot of conversation about food noise. This is something that prior to semaglutide and tirzepatide being out there was not really a concept, but it is one of the main benefits of this medication that, food noise is different for every individual. I shared my own kind of version of food noise, which for me was, I might be making breakfast, and at the time before I was on the medication, as I'm making the breakfast, I'm thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner. I might be having lunch, and I'd be thinking about what snacks do I need to get out of the pantry when I watch TV, when I get home from work. My food noise was always 3 steps ahead. We had a lot of patients talk about their different versions of the food noise, but we all kind of agreed once we got on this medication, it helped turn the volume down on it, for sure. For some patients, they talked about maybe it turned it down too much to the point that, they so much didn't think about food that they at times were not eating enough, which is another topic that we got onto. But food noise is a real thing. The medicine can affect it. The more that you can educate yourself on it and be aware of it, it's just a good thing. The lost, forgotten art of feeling full. We saw this research study where they talked to 1,000 obese people and asked them, when you do have a regular meal, do you have that sense of fullness when you eat? And about 80% of them, just shy of 9 out of 10 of them were saying no. And, around the room, there were similar feelings to that. And so, we went around the room and talked about it, and, a lot of people agreed. Prior to being on this medication, there didn't seem to be an end to what we could eat, whether that was a case of our stomachs elongated or stretched from so much eating, but there was definitely to a person when we talked about now that you're on the medication, do you have that feeling of fullness? And absolutely. And so that's one of the design elements of this medication. It's to make you feel full faster so you don't eat as much. And it almost can go to an extreme. We had a couple of people talk about, like, for Thanksgiving, they were just doing barely tablespoons worth of medication. The next thing we talked about was kind of what's referred here as the lost, forgotten feeling of fullness. They'd done this survey of over 1,000 obese people and kind of asked the question, do you regularly have a sense of fullness when you eat a typical meal? And as you can see, about 86% of them had said no, that they no longer had felt full when they ate, which kind of leads to the overeating and the cycle, making itself worse as our stomachs expand. We eat more to try to, search that feeling of fullness, which has kind of been forgotten or lost. But it was very clear around the room that, once starting on the medication, that was no longer a problem. It was almost to the extreme, the other direction, that, people were feeling full very quickly, to the point that, we even talked a little bit about Thanksgiving, where, people were just taking tablespoon sizes of servings, a little bit of mashed potato, a little bit of stuffing, a little bit of, turkey, and getting very full on it. And so it was a very common theme. And that's one of the designs of the medication. We talked about that in all the consultations, that it's made to make the food go through your stomach and your system slower. And so if it's going through so slow, you just can't pack as much in there. And so it is something that we have to pay attention to, because if you're getting very full very fast to the point that you're not eating enough, that's something that, please make us aware of here in the clinic when you come for check-ins. But, this was definitely an engaging topic to hear around the room, just the different experience from everybody. The other thing that we talked about, and this is a common thing that, not a common, but a recurring thing that we hear from a lot of our patients is, hey, what do I do when I hit a stall? A stall being defined as, the scale hasn't really moved in 3, 4, maybe 6 weeks. And this does happen. We had a great conversation that what we've observed and what the research shows, that there's usually 2 typical scenarios where people will stall. The first one is, ironically, for some people, it's hard to kind of comprehend this, but they're not eating enough. And, your body is an amazing system, and it's designed to make sure it survives. And so it needs a certain number of calories, if you were just to sit on the couch for 24 hours, to get through the day and maintain body functions. And that concept is called your BMR, your base metabolic rate. And if you've ever done one of our STIKU scans, the very first scan you got, the values listed in there would have been your BMR. And for a lot of people, let's just say you're about 200 pounds, maybe 5'5", 5'6". Your BMR is in that 1800 range. Again, that's just to sit on the couch for 24 hours and not do anything. Anything additional you do, you walk up the stairs, you go to work, you do some housework, you do some yard work, whatever it is that adds additional calories, but just to support your life support might be that 1800 calories. Now, anytime you get to about half of that, your body goes into what's considered kind of starvation mode, which is your body freaking out, saying, wait a second, we're not getting a lot of energy in. Maybe we're in the middle of the desert, we're about to die from starvation, and so it tries to hold on to every fat cell it can to make sure the body will last as long as it can. And so we've gone through this with a number of our patients where, they hit a stall. We kind of walk them through and, tell us what you're eating. We're going to jot it down. We look up kind of the macronutrients, the calories and things like that. And it turns out they're sometimes barely getting 600-700 calories a day. And what a very typical thing we hear is just not hungry, not really having breakfast, not really having lunch. I'll have a little dinner and then I'm to bed, but I'm just not hungry, so I don't eat. The weight loss stalls, and the prescription for that, and it really blows people's minds sometimes, is we have to have them eat some more. And so, whatever your BMR is, ideally you'd be about 25 or 30% below that for healthy weight loss. You get to that 50% below it, your body goes into the survival mode. And so, we have to have patients sometimes increase their daily calories, 300-400 calories, in order for the body to start losing again. And we've gone through this, like I mentioned, with the number of patients. I have, some quarters here on my desk where I do a friendly bet, like, okay, for this next week, we're gonna make a bet, 25 cents, that, if you will increase your calories 300 or 400 every day for the next 7 days, and we measure what's going on, I bet you, we'll see a breakthrough in this stall. And, I've got these quarters from people who come in for their weigh-ins, like, here you go. It blows my mind that I had to eat more to start losing, but it's working. And so, it is hard sometimes when you're on this medication to actually eat. You might not desire it. It might not taste as good as it used to, but you have to kind of get in that mindset where your body needs fuel. The food is the fuel, and so you're just eating to make sure that you have that fuel to power you through. The other reason that people a lot of times get into stalls is because of set points. A set point is a weight that your body tends to like. You may not have noticed it, but as you were gaining the weight, you might have hit a set point. Say you were going from 150 up towards 180, there might have been a set point somewhere in there, maybe the 165 range, where your body really tried to stay at that point for a long time. You might have been overeating it, but your body was doing everything it could to stay there until you finally busted through and moved up. Now you're on a program to lose the weight, and as you're losing it, you get back to towards that 165 mark. Your body really likes that, and it's considered a set point, and so it tries to stay there. It does everything it can. Even as you're reducing your calories, even as you're exercising more, it's doing everything it can to stay at that point, and you just kind of have to fight and push through that. For some people, those last a couple weeks. For some people, a little bit longer, but once you break through it, it goes down. And we went around and talked to the room that people have experienced this. It's definitely a thing. And so, one of the reasons that we focus on the scans is, when the scale's the only thing that you have to measure, it's hard to keep motivated. It's hard to know that you're still being successful. Sometimes, the scale's not moving. We talked about this with a couple of people in the room. They were very frustrated, but we looked at their scans, and even though the scale hadn't moved much, they were losing inches. Their fat percentage was going down. Their BMI was going down. And so it's not always about the scale. And also remember, for those of you that are doing some activities that are working out, muscle has mass and has weight. And so as you put on a few pounds of muscle, you might be walking a little bit more, your legs are developing leg muscles. You lose a couple pounds of fat, you gain a couple pounds of muscle. The scale says nothing changed, but you're making good progress. And so make sure your stall is something that you talk to us about, and we can help you through it. Now, the other important topic that we talked about was the goal of this medication is not to get you to a zero appetite. Something common that we hear when patients come in, which is like, hey, I've been on a certain dosage, but I'm noticing by day 4, day 5, I'm starting to get a little bit of an appetite that I didn't used to have, or I didn't have at the beginning of the week. We still need you to eat. The things that we check in on when you come in is, how is your appetite level? And that's one part of the measurement. But are you still having that feeling of fullness, compared to where you were before being on the medication? And we kind of use both of those to determine whether you should move up or not. Sometimes people get very fixated on, day 6, I felt a little bit of hunger, up my dosage. That's not really how we try to approach it. We try to take that holistic view of, hey, what was your weight loss? What was that appetite level? And what was that feeling of fullness, to kind of adjust? Because we also are trying to work within if you move up too much too fast, a lot of those side effects can kick in, and we don't want people to be miserable. And so, I just call this out as a reminder. The goal is not to get to zero appetite. The best way to sustain the weight loss and to keep it going is make sure your appetite's in control. So we call it moderate appetite, or somebody had mentioned, like, I just want to eat like a normie, not really defining what normie is, but that just means a little bit less food per meal, get that feeling of fullness, understanding what your BMR is, because we don't want to go below it. Talked about that a few minutes ago. And then getting some moderate exercise. I know in this clip art, this person's running, but we're just looking for a few minutes a day of movement. For some of you, it is getting to the gym. For some of you, it's taking the dog around the block. And for some of you, it's just, getting up and moving around the house. Everybody's different, but try to get some level of activity. We had a great conversation on stress eating. Everybody who attends the meeting, get a booklet with a handout. And so this topic and a lot of the information on it was in the first tab, and a lot of good information there. One of the things that we did go into a little bit of depth on was, for some of us in the past, stress eating was a coping mechanism, from whatever the issue that we were having, whether it was personal or work or whatever it was. Food at times was a crutch, a best friend, a way for us to deal with some of that. And when we're on this medication, we might not always be able to turn to that, that old best friend to get us through. And we need to think through and have other ways to cope, because it's not going to be just the eating side of it. And then the last thing we talked about, and this was also in the booklet, the 5th blue tab, was this great article about, habits that you should be developing while you're on this program for, kind of long-term weight loss. And what we liked about this article was it did align with a lot of the things that we talk about regularly to each of our patients. The first one is about staying hydrated, waking up early. You get a lot of things done at the beginning. But we also had a great conversation around making sure you get plenty of sleep, eating fiber, limiting your fats, but also, increasing your daily activity. And so that's a quick recap. We went on and had some other discussions around Thanksgiving and a few other things. But as I mentioned, we're going to get these meetings Zoom enabled going forward. So if you can't attend in real life, you can attend virtually. They'll be recorded, so you don't have to hear my actual recap of these. But thanks, everyone. It's great to see so many people on their journeys and having such success. We're kind of ending 2024 in an amazing spot compared to where we started. Our patients are doing an amazing job, and we thank every one of them for allowing us to be part of their journeys. And we hope you've had a great 2024. And for some of you, we won't see you before Christmas. So Merry Christmas to you guys, and hope you guys have a Happy New Year. Thank you.